Hello, good afternoon. I spent some wonderful time in the sun in my courtyard. It was a glorious afternoon. February continues to impress. It's a beautiful month in New Delhi. I uploaded that video just over 5.5 minutes, and it's the video before this one on my channel on YouTube. You're quite welcome to enjoy the experience with me. And how's everybody doing? Doing all right? Good. That's what I like to hear. All right. So, as it is before you, the search is for Canada truckers. And I filtered the results by most recent. So even the result that came out just a minute ago, according to the last check, is on the top of the page. So this feed, every time I would refresh it, there would be news items which have come out more recently, and I have picked those news items out of this which are less than 24 hours old. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 links open. Oh, it seems like I've opened one link twice. I'm going to close that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 links. And it's not in any particular sequence. And I'll be going through what catches my attention or what I consider to be the main points. But of course, for your benefit, the links to all these stories would be in the video description. And you're quite welcome to go through the stories on your own in as much detail as you wish to. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but as you know, I don't keep mumbling and repeating things. I try to keep it to the point, and there are diversions, but they seem to be part of the process. So here's the first story. Not the advertisement. This is the first story. Key US-Canada bridge reopens after police clear protesters. The crossing normally carries 25% of all trade between the two countries, and the blockade on the Canadian side had disrupted business in both countries, with automakers forced to shut down several assembly plants. So let's get it out of our minds that this was just a harmless protest with no implications other than to the local residents. That was never the case. Those who organized the protest, one can believe, had this understanding from the very beginning. And if they did not and were made aware that this is what is happening, and yet they continued to persist for all these days, you can understand they are responsible. And how many of these truckers and the people involved with the protest understood that could be open for debate? But those who organized, there's no way they're going to escape from the millions they caused in losses. Let's continue to read. The busiest US-Canada border crossing reopened late Sunday after protests against COVID-19 restrictions closed it for almost a week, while Canadian officials held back from a crackdown on a larger protest in the capital, Ottawa. So, this action by the government was not for the purpose of the show of strength. and was in proportion from what one can see, except for there would be videos here and there which would try to shift your opinion toward one side or the other. But overall, the response was measured and calculated, and one would find out that it was or was not justified. Detroit International Bridge Company said in a statement that the Ambassador Bridge is now fully open, allowing the free flow of commerce between the Canada and US economies once again. Esther Jensen, spokeswoman for the company, said in a later text to the Associated Press that the bridge reopened to traffic at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The crossing normally carries 25% of all trade between the two countries, and the blockade on the Canadian side had disrupted business in both countries, with automakers forced to shut down several assembly plants. And I am surprised that this effect happened so quickly. But the news of this has been coming out, that those plants, which were in Michigan, were shutting down, feeling the effects. There's a video here from ABC News. Although this is Indian Express, the video, which is via YouTube, can be embedded in any news source. So this is by ABC News, and you want to watch the footage, you can, of course. Police in Windsor, Ontario, said earlier in the day that more than 24 people had been peacefully arrested, 7 vehicles towed, and 5 seized as officers cleared the last demonstrators near the bridge, which links the city and numerous Canadian automotive plants with Detroit. As I mentioned, Detroit, Michigan was the other main city affected by these protests. And you can understand why the governments of both Canada and the US got involved. And is that what the organizers of the protest wanted? To get a reaction from both governments. These are things that become clear in hindsight. Sorry about that sound and other sounds coming from the outside. People going about their business, their lives. So we hear that here now. The details, this image I've seen quite a few times. And I see often that the policemen just look at their balaclavas or their masks. They're quite willing, and I'm quite sure these are all vaccinated as well. And they're quite willing to wear their masks over their noses and mouths. And they're following orders. But let's not for one moment think that these policemen don't have a mind of their own. Every single one of these policemen has gone through a process of training. And they do have independent minds. If there is anything that happens, every one of these policemen is fully capable of taking appropriate action as and when required. And the training and the discipline on the left side of this image far exceeds anything that is on the right side of the image. And it's a good image. I like it because the trucker with the Canadian flag, he's free to say what he wants to, but he's no threat to the policeman here. They see this gentleman probably in his 50s, one behind him also around that age perhaps. They don't see them as any kind of threat. This is not one police officer. There's a whole lot of police officers there, and they're fully ready. And before they got here, they were given their orders, obviously, what to expect, what to do, so on and so forth. The caption here says, a protester gestures towards police officers who stand guard on a street after Windsor police said that they are starting to enforce a court order to clear truckers and supporters who have been protesting against coronavirus disease COVID-19 vaccine mandates by blocking access to the Ambassador Bridge, which connects Detroit and Windsor in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. This is from the Reuters. I think I'll use this image, and give credit to Reuters, of course, for the YouTube video. I'll use this as the feature image. You can read a lot. What often happens is that people are unable to see the complexity of the situation on the ground unless it's beyond the point of breaking story. And those details come out later. But these days they come out very soon, even on the same day. But there's some things that got to be known very early. Very early. When these protests happened. On the first day, things started to come out in the open. And even before that, actually. And this was a clear demonstration of what stance someone is willing to take and why. Truckers' convoy remains peaceful. DHS blames vaccine skeptics for terrorism. Super Bowl 56. There's this video here. It says duration is 13 minutes and 19 seconds. Now, I haven't seen this video, but I have never seen this news source before, but it was one of the ones recommended. And somebody called Kirk. Kirk gives his take on the truckers in Canada out-freedoming the US. Biden and, it says apostrophe, Biden's DHS perhaps, it says, blaming vaccine skeptics for heightened terror level, and on Super Bowl 56. Although I haven't seen this video, any one of you is free to do so. But I can understand that the community of truckers holds certain people in respect, the ones who are more educated. And if they happen to be doctors who are the vaccine skeptics, then most certainly those vaccine skeptics who continue to push unbalanced information or misinformation by suppressing known facts, by constantly pushing a narrative that is anti-establishment, anti-government, you already know those doctors, those professionals have moved beyond science, and they are well into the territory of politics as well as they understand. And including the politicians, of course, but it's a business to be in politics. You understand when you go through the pattern of their narrative, not one or two news stories. If you study their pattern of narrative over the last few months, last couple of years, some of them would have a background even before that, you'll know that this movement, this physical protest by truckers was an opportunity they were looking for, because they themselves are not capable of doing it, but they are capable of influencing these people who have put those medical professionals or politicians in a position of trust. And if those people are incorrigible and pretend to be more capable than they actually are, well, you know, there are some names that'll come out, which are already out. And in the coming days, weeks, and months, you will see the implications. There's no doubt about that. Well, it just so happens that here, I don't know what people would think about this, but leak site says it has been given list of Canada Truck Convoy donors after reported hack. And this is by Reuters. Reuters, a leak site says it has been given reams of data about the donors to the Canadian anti-vaccine mandate truckers after the fundraising platform popular with supporters of the movement allegedly suffered a hack. And I was just thinking the same thing, allegedly suffered a hack. Distributed Denial of Secrets announced on its website that it had 30 megabytes of donor information from Christian fundraising site Give Send Go, including names, email addresses, zip codes, and internet protocol addresses. There is nowhere to hide. Nowhere to hide. At the same time, Give Send Go appeared to be offline. Visitors to the website were met with the message that was under maintenance and we will be back very soon. A message seeking comment from the site's operators was not immediately returned early Monday. A Daily Dot journalist said on Twitter that the site suffered a hack overnight and had its front page briefly replaced by a clip from the movie Frozen and a manifesto accusing it of supporting an insurrection in Ottawa. What happened? Reuters could neither immediately confirm the hack nor the leak claims, although Distributed Denial of Secrets, DDoS, has a long record of hosting leaked data from right-wing organizations, including the far-right Patriot Front and the Oath Keepers. What DDoS actually means, Distributed Denial of Service. This is a reuse of the acronym. Is it distributed? I'm not sure, but S stands for service. Yeah, I could check. Denial of service attack. DDoS, I know. Denial of service. All right. You have a very good idea of what this means. And people want no government. What people want, some people, they have been harboring the desire to bring down government, bring down what they call the elite, bring down institutions. Why do these people want that? What is there to achieve? Some of these people are quite old and near the end of their lives. It seems like they have nothing to lose, and the only contribution they can make toward the end of their lives, or what they consider to be the end of their lives, they might continue to live on for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, who knows. But the greatest contribution which they feel is the virtuous ending of their lives is to bring down and to destroy that which has been built, not perfectly, of course not, but that which has been built with errors, with mistakes, with corruption also at times. There's no doubt about that. But gradually built over decades. They want to bring it down in days, if they could. And ask those people, what do you have right now to replace this? What do you have to offer in its stead? Show me the evidence. And if you have something better than what is standing, very well. Put what is superior in front of what is already there, and we will discard what is inferior. But if you want to put up a broken hut in the stead of a palace, then you have no reason to be supported other than the envy against those who are more successful, more capable, more knowledgeable, more accomplished. You have absolutely nothing to offer other than your negative existence and your negative sentiments of envy, of resentment, of jealousy, of dissatisfaction, and your own lives as failures. And you want to put yourself up as people to be emulated. How deluded are you? Did I even read the headline here? Traffic on US-Canada Bridge resumes even as protests continue in Ottawa. It's a 2-minute read. Just let's read this. The caption. The Canada Police was successful in clearing the bridge by Sunday, towing the vehicles that had jammed the site and arresting multiple protesters for violations and abusive behavior. There is hardly a surprise there. Next news. Excuse me. Well, my cough is a lot better. I don't know. I'm not going to claim there's a relationship between the two. But, well, it's up to you to come up with that hypothesis. Key US-Canada bridge reopens after police clear protesters. And this is again a repeat of the other news. Well, this looks like a tow truck, is it? Because, yeah, this one is towing that truck. That truck is facing the other way. And this truck is dragging it, and the rear wheels are up. So, Mars Towing. Even have a number. You want to call him up? 647-464-4870. Call up the company. Well, what's that called? A rig. That rig is being towed. It says a truck passes Ontario provincial police officers and demonstrators in opposition to COVID-19 mandates on the Toronto-bound QEW highway after crossing the Peace Bridge in Fort Erie, Ontario. Associated Press. This is a good image too. I could use this on YouTube and give the credit to AP. I'll just read a little bit, or I'll go down in the story again. There's this ABC video here also. Anti-mandate protesters demonstrate against COVID-19 restrictions on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. This is what I was going to look at. I mean, I'm not going to say I was going to look at. This is something that I knew of. The demonstrations have reverberated across Canada and beyond, with similar convoys in France, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security warned that truck convoys may be in the works in the United States. The Ambassador Bridge had remained closed for most of the day despite the break-up of the protest as a heavy snowstorm blanketed the area. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens had said the span would open once authorities determined it was safe to do so. Talking about snowstorms, what I was thinking also, there's some information which is you have to extract. Like, who are the ones who were contributing to the convoy? Now that should be confidential information, but nothing is really confidential. But think about those people who are out on social networks supporting in different ways movements like this by rhetoric, by contributions, and so on and so forth. The government has to do nothing to extract that information. That information is just publicly available. And again, you'll see there's a certain age group more closely associated with such movements and such work. You'll find them to be older people, a certain generation. Perhaps they waited all their lives to bring about anti-establishment, anti-government activity. And the crisis came up, and what was buried in their minds and hearts just exploded, and even they don't have any control over what they're saying and doing. You could see how that could happen, and what belief systems are behind such things. Continue reading here. Canada's Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne. Wow, Champagne. Welcomed the development, saying on Twitter, "Good news, glad to see that the Ambassador Bridge is now reopened." US President Joe Biden's administration on Sunday acknowledged the seemingly peaceful resolution to the demonstration, which it said had widespread damaging impacts on the lives and livelihoods of people on both sides of the border. Well, if you find people who are allergic to the name Joe Biden, I can pretty much guarantee there would be some avid Trump supporters in that category, regardless of their profession, designation in life, whatever. And I'm not a fan of Joe Biden. I think he's old and shows himself to be senile again and again. It's disappointing on a lot of counts. He's not a young man. But, excuse me, got the sniffles too. When he's acting as president, he's not acting as Superman. Superman works alone. He doesn't need anyone. Or Batman. He doesn't need an army. Batman is Batman. Superman is Superman. Well, Superman has superpowers, so he's Superman. But the president has an administration with thousands upon thousands of people. He's just well, you might sign a piece of paper here and then. And I wonder how much Joe Biden is capable of understanding those pieces of paper that come in front of him. I don't think he's someone who can read through 10 pages with concentration and successfully understand what is written there. If there's complicated language, I think he would read a page and get frustrated, or less. He's not one of those people. But neither was Donald Trump. I don't think he was the kind of person who would sit down and read page upon page, regardless of details. So I'm saying all these things because now this is probably the last time I'm going to look at this news. I'm not going to be looking at this again because as far as Canada is concerned, and even other countries really, we have now a precedent in understanding. This came out an hour ago, according to, well, I haven't refreshed the page, so it might be longer than an hour. I've never looked at this news source before. This is, what is it? Penticton Herald. I have never seen this news. I just read that from up there. Ottawa mayor pushes to shrink convoy footprint as feds eye action. Ottawa looks for convoy move with noon deadline. And excuse me. Frustration over the protests has become palpable in the national capital, where residents launched counter-protests over the weekend against the so-called Freedom Convoy. Well, the true colors of the Freedom Convoy were evident before the protest started, and of course on day one. And I was interested. I came across people personally who are adamantly in support of Freedom Convoy. Where did I come across them? On social networks, on Twitter particularly. You have to look at their state of mind. You have to look at their economic condition. And of course, some of them have a pattern of anti-establishment, anti-government, anarchist thinking. Some are totally against the existence of police, of government, or any state. They look for a stateless society. And the kind of people that gather around such thinking and whom they idolize, whom they hold up to be heroes, always notice there's a pattern. These people respect one thing more than anything else. What do you think that thing is? Is it wisdom? Is it restraint? Is it a sense of justice? Is it insight? It's power. They understand power. They desire power. And a lot of the times they work at the level an animal works at, in terms of their thinking, in terms of their instincts. They display the level of thinking driven by instinct, very much like an animal does. Some of them are like wild animals also, but they're not up in the hierarchy. And some of them are like poorly trained domestic animals. And some of them are like animals that cannot be trained. But that is the kind of behavior that comes out. Something below human that happens. I think it's possible for nearly any human to display that kind of thinking or behavior. People have. It's not that this is some unique insight I have. But when the pressure rises, that those tendencies come out more easily in some than others. You could tell it by their language and a lot of other things you can tell. Well, this is the last article, and you'll have the link for this alongside others. New Zealand's Prime Minister signals harsher stance on vaccine protest. You know, I look at this image like this gentleman here says unvaccinated on his t-shirt. Looks good for his age, the way he lived his life. But it's good for him, you know, if he's in good health, good. He's unvaccinated. But I am a bit surprised by how many of these people, physically he looks all right on the outside. Who knows about, you know, his internal organs and so on and so forth, or his mind. But oftentimes I notice, are these people of the mind that they are not able to think of any other challenge to health other than COVID-19? Have they forgotten? Like this elderly gentleman He's in a crowd. What if he falls down? And I'm sure, with age, there is no person on earth whose body doesn't change, doesn't go through some kind of deterioration. He's not what he was when he was 30 or 35 or 40 years old. So if he falls down, fractures his wrist or his forearm, what do you think would happen? Well, suppose he needs to get a plaster. Well, he'll have to go to a doctor. He needs some kind of medication. He has to go to a doctor. Heaven forbid if he needs any kind of surgery. And they say, sir, we're going to use some local anesthesia. Where do you think the anesthesia comes from? From one of those companies that makes the vaccines, perhaps. So it's just something I observe. Excuse me. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has accused coronavirus restriction protesters of using intimidation and harassment as a convoy of demonstrators continues to disrupt the capital, Wellington. Police initially allowed protesters to set up tents and camp on the grounds of New Zealand's parliament before arresting 122 people on Thursday before backing off again. The size of the protest dropped to a few hundred last week but increased again to around 3,000 over the weekend. I do excuse me for the sounds coming from the outside. I told them I would be busy, but it's hard to even control people by warning them, even if they're working at a business. I told their manager a few times, but it continues to happen. So you can imagine those people are working and they can be fired from their employment for continued misbehavior. And what about these people? What is motivating them to remain disciplined or peaceful? What's the guarantee they will remain peaceful? There's no guarantee. So, should we continue reading a little bit more? Let's do. This is Belfast Telegraph. So it says, Miss Ardern has told reporters that the conduct of the camped out protesters cannot be tolerated. Her comments come as authorities have moved to taking a harsher stance toward the convoy of demonstrators that have camped out on New Zealand Parliament's grounds for nearly a week and blocked surrounding streets. Miss Ardern said, excuse me, I very clearly have a view on the protesters and the way that they've conducted their protests because it has moved beyond sharing a view to intimidation and harassment of the people around central Wellington. That would be seen over and over again. Impatience is very easily seen among people who gather like this. It says that cannot be tolerated. And I'll say one more thing. Suppose you give these people a chance to run things their way. What do you think would happen? Are these the people who say live and let live? I doubt there are all like that. They're not all like that, obviously. So they say the mandates would go away, we'll go back to who we were, just living our normal lives. I doubt a lot of these had normal lives before. And the hardships came. And I have never been one who has been in favor of mandates of any kind and not in favor of lockdowns. But very early on, I started to see what are the effects of the lockdown and what is it doing to society. And I could see very early, about 2 years ago, that the lockdowns, though they're motivated more by politics and hardly by science, are having the effect of exposing a certain kind of people. And in the lockdowns, there were people who should not have been affected. They were affected. And those people were right in saying that the lockdowns have not affected everyone equally. Depends on your profession, depends on your business also. But it exposed society. It exposed the government for its mistakes along the way. There is not a government that has been error-free. How can it be? And there has been a lot of wrong done on the other side. I would admire either side that accepts its own shortcomings. Either side. Be it the government, be it the protesters. Either side that is able to learn from its own mistakes and move forward in a better way is the better one. That is my honest understanding. Those who are incapable of learning, well, whatever their reason is, they cannot be the better ones. There's no way they can be considered the better ones. Should we read a little more? I guess we can. This looks a little funny here. Parliament Speaker Trevor Mallard tried to make the protesters uncomfortable last week by turning on lawn sprinklers and blasting out decades-old Barry Manilow songs in the 1990s hit Macarena on repeat loop. Oh, wow. That's some creative thinking there. Maybe I will listen to some Barry Manilow today. Let's see. Police on Monday told protesters to move their illegally parked vehicles as soon as possible, offering them alternative parking at a nearby stadium. Wellingtonians have the right to move freely and safely around the city, so all roads being clear is a top priority, said Superintendent Corey Parnell, the Wellington District Commander. So just here, if you think, people in Wellington, everyday people are moving about freely and safely in the city, but there are some people who have a problem with the government. They say the government is taking away their freedom, putting too many restrictions. And if this understanding is based on anti-vaccine sentiment or vaccine skepticism, when the evidence now has been collected over the last 2 years and more, I'm still not saying there has to be a mandate. I'm still not saying that. But I am questioning, honestly, the ability of certain people to understand the science. What about those people who are talking about early treatment? They're still talking about hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, and I'm all for proven drugs because they've been in the market for so long. Well, where do you think those came from? Did hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin come from some grandma's kitchen? Did some lady at home make up hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and distributed it around the world? Or was there years of research and quality control day after day at the level of manufacturing by pharmaceutical companies that ensured that if you took hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin yesterday, then if you take it again in a month or 2 months, or you continue to take it every day, you can be sure that's the same pill you took last week. This week, it's the same. It's not even up or down by a milligram. How do you think that happens? That is not an accident. If pharmaceutical companies wanted to kill people, They could change the formulations, they could change the dosage quantity, and nobody would know what happened until it's too late. They don't need to develop a vaccine to kill people and ruin their reputation for all times to come. They don't need to do that. There are a million other ways that the government and pharmaceutical companies and even independent actors have to create great harm without having to create vaccines. Just think about that. If you can think about it. Well, now we're over 45 minutes, and as I said, I intend not to repeat on this subject again. I don't think I've unnecessarily repeated myself. I've coughed much less than I normally do, which I'm glad about. I had some tea with salt, and that helped. And I do ask for your excuse for the disturbances, audio disturbances that happened during the making of this video. But I'm done, and it's time I would say thank you for your attention, goodbye, and take care.